Design tips and tricks for your ePortfolio. In this video, I'm going to go over the basic principles of graphic design that you can incorporate in your ePortfolio and talk about some common design missteps that students have made in the past. First, this is a bad design choice, choosing a picture of a random person or object that does not connect to me, my topic, or my audience. There's this belief that any picture is better than no picture sometimes, and that is a misbelief. So if you are unsure of what photos to include, think of quality over quantity. Now, we're just going to move through this example of a badly designed ePortfolio and kind of talk about some of the different problems. First thing I'd like you to notice is my resume, my work, and my skills. Some of these match up with our submenus, some do not. So like my work and projects, that should be repeated. Either both of them should be projects or both of them should be my work. Let's look at our resume page. So the design problem with our resume page is the background is way too busy and too fast. And you can see that it makes reading a little difficult. Also notice that here I have my attached downloadable resume, but unfortunately, there's no description, there's no directions telling me what to do. So this is just kind of a strange document in the corner that your user may or may not see. Also notice the footer that is showing up across our ePortfolio. So this content is going to be recreated on all pages. Something to consider is if you put your phone number, do you really want to put your phone number on there? An email address is perfectly fine. Also, make sure you update the copyright symbol here with your own name, or you can just delete it. Right, so let's look at projects. So before we talk about the individual projects, I want to draw your attention to the images and talk about why these images are not great. So obviously the first image is blurry. I was maybe going for an artistic vibe, but it just looks out of focus. I added a filter to my second image, again, artistic vibe, but it really detracts from the overall ePortfolio. And then here, doing a little better, choosing at least a photo that is connected to my content. However, it's not a great photo and it's messy and it doesn't really fit with the rest of my ePortfolio palette. So let's take a look at some individual principles, starting with alignment. So let's look at the good alignment page. So when we click on the good alignment page, that button does not work. That's a bad design. No working button. So if I go to the good alignment page, you can see here that I have my picture is in line with my heading. My text is left justified, and it aligns with the heading. My caption aligns with my photo. It just makes it a lot easier to read. But if we look at our bad alignment, our bad alignment page has stuff just kind of everywhere. So here's my paragraph content, but it's centered, which I don't recommend. If you left justify it, it's much easier to read for most English speakers, like just how our eyes naturally adjust. My heading is kind of off here, my photo, my caption, it just is a mess. So again, looking at the good alignment page, this isn't good because it's following a traditional kind of Z alignment where you have the heading, then content, picture in the upper right corner. You could have all of this centered, you could have this and a picture over here, text over here. But as long as it's all intentional, that's the important part. All right, let's return to projects and talk a little bit about contrast. So contrast can be the biggest hurdle for readability because of the lack of contrast between text and background, either because of color, style, or movement, can force the reader to focus on the act of reading instead of the content. We saw this in our resume page with a lack of contrast between the darker blue and the gray text. Another good example of this right here. So you can see this gray kind of all bleeds together, makes it difficult to see. Where here we have some great contrast between the white text and the blue background, or the black headline that's bolded and the blue background. So you can see one is much easier to read than the other. All right, and our last basic principle is going to be talking about text and fonts. So text should not distract from the content of your page. You want to make sure to choose just 1 to 3 fonts maximum and use white space to give the user a break. So these are kind of like our different types of fonts. You have a serif, a sans serif, and a display. This is a more traditional text choice. This has a more modern feel. For something like this, you really only want to use this for decorative titles or headings. And you can see here, when you mix a bunch of different fonts together, it makes it more difficult to read. So we've talked about contrast, we've talked about alignment, and we've talked about text choices. One last thing to keep in mind is the principle of repetition. So you'll notice that my buttons are all the same color. They're using the same type of hover control here. They all line up on the side. So here I'm repeating some of my design elements to make it easier for my user to interact and understand. So they know that when they click on a button, it's going to take them somewhere. So think about what elements you want to repeat, whether that be the theme colors, the type of content you're including, or if it's just as simple as making sure that you're sticking to the same theme of buttons. Whatever element you decide to repeat will just enhance the cohesiveness of your ePortfolio and again, make it easier for your user to interact with it. There's obviously a lot more to design than what I've gone over, but these are just kind of like the basics that should be able to help you create an ePortfolio that is readable and easy to navigate for your user.